Welcome to Off Panel. Yo, everybody. Welcome to the last episode of Off Panel of 2017. And it's the big one. It's the end of the year extravaganza as my pal Brandon Burpee joins the show to talk about the greatest comics of 2017. You ready to do this, Brandon?
Oh, for sure.
All right. So Brandon, we're going to count down our 20 favorite series, graphic novels, and everything comic related of 2017 here in a bit. But I wanted to start by talking about the year in comics in general before going in that direction. So, for listeners that don't know, it's been a weird year of reading for both Brandon and I, but I want to get your take. What is your take on the year in comics? Is it good, bad, somewhere in between? What is it for you?
You know, it's been a crazy year, just because my reading has been in spurts. So typically I'm pretty consistent. I keep a log. You know how I do this.
You should tell listeners what you do normally.
Okay, yeah. So typically what I do is I will keep track each week of a top 10. Then
Wait, each month or each week?
Each week.
Okay.
That's how I started the year. I only made it up through April, and then my divorce happened, and then I stopped reading for a little while. But so up to that point, my plan was, and I was doing a great job of doing it every week, my top 10. Then at the end of the month, I would take those top 10s, and I would update the list to be my top 10 of 2017. So I would just take the months and narrow it down. Mm-hmm. Do the same thing the next month, pick my top 10 of April, per se. And then I would compare it to what was already on the list of the 2017 to date, and then just keep my list up to date. So that eventually fell off. That's my usual standard fare type, like meticulous keeping track of for end of year, because I love end of year. Then I stopped reading for months. Mm-hmm. And then I started reading again in spurts, and then now recently I've been really blowing through 2018. So some of my view on it's a little skewed, I think, because sometimes when you're waiting and you're reading issues monthly, sometimes it doesn't have the same effect, I think, as reading it straight through.
Yeah.
Because I was burning through I burned through I don't know, 8 issues of certain things. I go back and go to the comic shop or go to Comixology and pick them all up in a big chunk and then burn through them. And that was kind of fun. But I would have to say last year was a super disappointing year, and this year feels a whole lot fucking better.
That's the thing. I was going to say that too, because despite the fact that my reading, for me, my reading has changed dramatically because, as we've talked about before, I've switched to trades largely for a lot of books. And the weird thing about that is I'm doing almost the exact same thing you are, which is reading in big chunks. And it really changes the experience. It is kind of funny how some comics have a way different feel if you're just reading it in chunks, like you're binge reading effectively versus reading it month to month. And
absolutely.
It's been interesting to see how my list changes based off that. Not only in the fact that I'm reading in chunks, but also I've run into this weird situation where I'm not sure if something was actually released in the year that I'm trying to put it on because I'm reading it in trades. I'm just like, is this a 2017 comic technically? Whatever. I'm a little bit more liberal in my lists in that way, but it is really interesting. But I do think that I had my list when I started out was probably 30 plus deep. And then beyond that, when I got down to it, I think I switched my 20 spot 3 or 4 times just because I was having a really hard time trying to finalize a 20 list because there was so much that I liked. And I still feel like I didn't read a lot of the great comics that are out there just because there's so much out there.
Yeah. I had mine narrowed down to about 27, then had to cut it down. But I'm with you. There's stuff that I know somebody's going to listen to this and be like, what do you mean? What about blank? And
right.
I'm going to be like, oh, crap, didn't even read it. You know what I mean? Which is such an insane thing to say. I don't think there's ever been a year like that for me. Yeah, this has been all new territory.
I do think it's really funny. I read all these other lists that other people do. And I kind of, sometimes I'm like, am I a comic book Philistine? I feel like I'm a basic bitch, Brandon. I feel like I read this stuff and I don't even know what I'm talking about, but I just like what I like. But a lot of the stuff, I sometimes I'm looking at. There's this one comic by, I think it's my favorite thing is Monsters by Emil Ferris. It's this graphic novel, and it's on every list, right near the top. And I looked at it and I haven't had a chance to read it yet, and eventually I probably will read it. But I was just I'll read that later. I feel fine with my list, and I don't know. It's funny how that works, but why do you think this year was better qualitatively than last year? Is there something noticeable in the year to year change?
Well, I think for me last year, obviously, like I'm a Big Two fan. I am,
Yeah.
you know, and I felt like last year the Big Two was okay, but not great. Marvel was horrible, um, and DC was, kind of coming around with Rebirth around that time. Things were starting to pick up a little bit, um, but overall, like it just felt like a down year. And this year, I think there's a lot more parity in the league, if you will.
Sure.
And Marvel has stepped up its game in some regards.
Hmm.
DC has definitely stepped their game up. Image was really strong for me this year. It definitely was an interesting year because for the first time ever, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is not on my list.
What? That
This
is
is
an
like a
early
perpetual
spoiler.
top 3 or 5, and it's just not even on the list. So this year's been kind of weird. Yeah, it's been weird.
I kind of feel like 2017 was one of those years where it's like, you know how so before we recorded this podcast, we were talking about how Shohei Ohtani signed with the Anaheim Angels. When you look at that roster, it's like Shohei Ohtani and it's Mike Trout and it's like Andrelton Simmons and like a bunch of fucking scrubs, right?
You're right.
And then you're like that was like 2016. And now
Mhm.
2017 is like the Houston Astros, where you're like, damn, this lineup. I don't know. I guess you could say maybe not the Astros because they got the MVP on their team. It's like there's no weak spots. It's like
Yeah.
all their starting pitchers are good. All the relievers are good. All of their lineup is good. It's like, maybe nobody's going to be like a generational talent. Nobody's going to be maybe like an Aaron Judge, or nobody's going to be
Mhm.
like Clayton Kershaw or something like that. But it's just these are all damn solid players. I feel like that's 2017.
I agree because I don't know if there's anything necessarily on my list at the moment that I'm like, oh my god, I'm going to buy that in a giant omnibus and read
Right.
that yearly. Exactly like you're saying, but the consistency of the books is so much better than last year. So much better.
It's like you
And
have it's like you have no one X statics, but it's like you have 20 Peter David X factors.
yeah, for sure. I think that's a great example because the 7 that I eliminated, because like I said, I originally had 27. Like it kind of hurt to get rid of some of those.
Right.
Like, and last year I was struggling to put 20 in. Honestly,
Yeah.
I was like, I guess you're in because you were not as bad as that one.
So you said TMNT. I'm going to tell you my spoiler. For the
Mhm.
first time since it came out, Saga does not make my list.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah, which is that was a hard cut, but it's like just a lot of depth. But so before we get to our list, I had some questions from one of my patrons. Shout out to James Kaplan. I wanted to go through those with you. The first question is he want to know what our biggest surprises in terms of positives are, and what our biggest disappointments are for the year. Like, is there anything that stands out for you in those two categories?
Uh, I think disappointment wise, Doomsday Clock just didn't ring my bell.
Yeah, I heard really like it seemed like there was some people who were over the moon about it, and then like
Yeah.
there was some people who were just like, this is just straight garbage.
Yeah, like there were people who were like, "This is just such a good book," and I had to reread it. I'm like, "Did I miss something?"
Yeah, I hate it when that happens. There's some
Yeah, like everybody thinks it's so good. Like clearly, I'm an idiot, and so I went back and read it. And I'm like, "Nah, y'all are idiots. This is not that great."
that Gary Frank art did look pretty good though. I didn't read it.
Yeah, well, you didn't really miss much. That may be one of those ones that's better reading straight through, though. I mean, who knows? I don't know where they're going with it, but it's just the expectations I had for it and the way they hyped it, and then the way it actually came out. It was like, oh, like spoilers for everybody, but like that's not really Rorschach. Like, oh, okay. It doesn't really actually interact with the DC universe other than having like Superman at the end of it. Okay. Sure.
Yeah, it's not what you expected based off of how they
Yeah,
built it
like,
up.
this is not how you hyped it at all, guys.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that maybe it'll end up being like a slow burn that they end up getting through all that stuff. But I don't know. I just find it to be a generally weird book because you know, I have like again, I haven't read this comic, but like Jeff Johns and Alan Moore are not similar writers to me, and it's really weird to have Jeff Johns do that kind of book to me because it's just they're just not similar. Like Jeff Johns to me is effectively like a disciple of Richard Donner. He's like old school Superman style, like Silver Age. He's kind of like the writer equivalent of like a Chris Samnee drawing to me, and
Yeah.
and like and that's a great thing, but that's not Alan Moore. and it's kind of funny how that works. But I don't know. I didn't read it, so I can't really say. Any positive surprises to you?
Positive surprises. The parity
Yeah.
across the board was pretty surprising because coming this year I was kind of losing hope.
It is worth noting that like when you like sometimes people say parody in a bad way. You're totally using that in a good way. I agree. Like I
Oh
think
yeah, 100% good.
I think having like parody across the board where like there's good comics coming from everywhere is where you need to be.
Yeah, it's good for the business. I mean, it's just you got a better chance of somebody stumbling on a book that they're going to want to pick up more books because of, as opposed to last year where you've got more books that people are going to pick up and not want to come back.
Yeah.
So there's just more consistency with the quality, I think, this year. And there's a lot of diversity in genres and types, and that's even within like Marvel and DC are doing a good job of like the Young Animals line and things like that. Like there's just, I don't know, I think there's just more there.
I'm surprisingly heavy on my list in like young people comics. Like I think that like we're reaching the point in our lives where perhaps we're not young folk, but I like the fact that these comics
We are
exist.
definitely not young folk. I'm going to go ahead and squash that thought for you.
Man, I got my haircut the other day. I couldn't believe how much gray hair was coming out. I'm like, what is this shit? Come on. I mean,
Hopefully I have no gray hair.
I'm going to be honest, Brandon. I'm going to be a silver fox. I'm going to be hot as fuck when I'm got gray hair. But at the same time, I like was alarmed. I'm like, this is way more than last time I got my haircut. But anyways, I have a lot of young folk comics, and the thing is like you said, diversity in genre. I think that we're loaded up in that. I think that my list is more loaded in varying types of subjects, not just in like from publishers that are outside of Marvel and DC, but like at Marvel and DC, they're like doing things that are way different than they used to do. Like the positive surprise for me is like I am really kind of blown away by how weird DC willingly got this year.
Mm-hmm.
They did like those Hanna-Barbera comics, which were crazy.
Yep.
And they did like the young animal stuff, like Shade the Changing Girl didn't make my list. Great comic.
Yep.
Really, really weird. I mean, it was weird.
I like Mother Panic too.
Doom Patrol was great. I mean, like that's awesome. Only beef I have with that is I really wish its release schedule was a little less crazy.
Yeah. Luckily, though, I'm so far behind it doesn't even matter. I ended up reading like 6 of them in a row.
Yeah, it's so good though. I mean, that's the funny thing is like I actually dropped it once it started getting weird, and I just bought the trade. And I'm like, this is a great comic. But it didn't make my list, but it was on my initial like larger list as I was going into it. But I really appreciate like DC getting kind of weird. I kind of like I feel like Marvel's doing that too. Like Squirrel Girl had a zine issue that even had like Jim Davis doing like a Squirrel Girl style like or a Garfield style like story about Galactus and Silver Surfer, which was really awesome. So they're doing some weird stuff, but I really feel like DC was kind of leading the front in terms of superhero comics getting weird, which I appreciate.
Yeah, I'm all about getting weird. Let's get weird.
Yeah, and I do think that it's like you made a very factual statement about Marvel is like I think while their business choices are weird and some of their publishing choices have been weird, I do think that their line actually has a lot better comics than people really like let on.
It's a lot better than it was last year, for goddamn sure.
Yeah, like I still think that it lacks direction, but I feel like qualitatively speaking that there's a lot of good comics out there. But I don't really know what disappointments I have. I really didn't like the Secret Service Kingsman sequel. I only read one issue of that. That was a very bad comic. That was the worst comic I read this year.
Your Mark Miller did you wrong.
Hey, Mark Miller didn't write it. Just saying.
Good point.
But it was a product of him, effectively. Yeah. Anyways, but yeah, I have to admit, my list has been cold enough where I almost never read bad comics, in my opinion. And that's a cool thing. But I also do think that largely, I feel like in the parody standpoint, I do feel like it's like, in Ratatouille, the whole anyone can cook thing about how like a great meal can come from anywhere. I really feel like we're at a point where like comics can come from places you wouldn't even expect, and they can be great. And I think that's a really cool thing.
Yeah, I agree.
So next question he has, he also want to know about trends in comic storytelling in the comics industry. Were there any noticeably good or bad trends in storytelling or like the broader world of comics you've noticed? I'll start. Like, I just want to say that like I again, DC getting weird is a good trend to me, and I appreciate that they're thinking outside the box. Like, I even appreciate Marvel. This might not be something I actually listen to, but they're doing a podcast, like a serial, like a radio serial, effectively, of Wolverine.
Yeah, with Percy.
No. It's wait, with Percy. Oh yeah, Ben
Isn't it
Percy. Yeah,
Benjamin Percy?
yeah. And then they have like the main Hobbit from or no main dwarf from the Hobbit movies. Richard
Hmm.
Armitage is playing Wolverine. I think that's cool. Like I appreciate like the outside the box thinking over there.
I will say though, the only way that could have been better is if they'd have brought back the voice from the X-Men animated series. That would have been. I would have been like, fuck yes, take my money.
Did you know it's the 25th anniversary of? Oh no, that was the 25th anniversary of the Batman animated series this year.
Yep. Now they're talking about finally putting them on fucking Blu-ray. Thank God.
How do they not have those on Blu-ray?
I don't know. I've got them all on DVD, but I'm like, let's get that upgrade going. And then in 17 years, we can look at doing 4K when it's no longer relevant.
I think it was coming out on Laserdisc soon too.
Oh man, throwback.
Yeah. So were there any trends that you noticed?
Yeah, a couple of good trends I really liked are less of the trade paperback structured storytelling at Marvel and DC.
Oh yeah.
You're getting single one-off issues. You're getting 3-issue arcs, 2-issue arcs. It's very much so one of those things where, like, I think for a while their comics were taking a hit because they were trying to like force feed everything to fit 6 issues. It's like you don't need 6 issues for some of these arcs.
Yeah.
And so I like that it's less trade paperback dependent, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that digital comics are doing so well. Because it's just following the trend of how people are buying, I think, and I think more people are inclined to buy it individually like that. But that's and also trade dresses I think are on the rise.
Oh yeah.
I love DC's new trade dress. I love Marvel's Rebirth stuff, especially like with the X-Men and with the little head boxes. Like
You mean
I'm
Legacy?
Legacy. Sorry, yeah. And so I'm pretty stoked about that. I think both companies are looking good there. Yeah.
That's a great trend. Wait, what was the first one you said? Oh, the serious thing. I also one thing I liked is I think it was last week. DC released 2 Prestige Edition books, and like it had been a minute since they had released a Prestige book, and like the return of the Prestige book is something I have been wanting for a while because I love Prestige comics. Granted, I will give them negative credit because one of their Prestige books actually had normal binding, which defeats the purpose of it being a Prestige book.
Right.
But what are you gonna do? But like
Prestige pricing.
Yeah, it was $5.99, but it's still a Staples.
Yeah.
Like Batman Creature of the Night, Kurt Busiek and John Paul Leon, like that was straight like square binding, classic, Prestige stuff, and it was great, and I love that, and I like again more outside the box stuff, but I do like that point you made about not necessarily writing for the trade exclusively because it makes the issues feel more relevant. It like I feel like it chases people less to trades. And I also think that encourages people like a better experience on Marvel Unlimited too, because like that's a big product for them. But I also like that people are embracing Hoopla, which is like the library app that you can like rent books from. We've already talked about your long-standing beef with libraries or lack of ability to go to libraries.
Mostly just
Alaska.
The Anchorage.
Yeah. But anyways, if you ever get a chance, you can get this app and you can actually download trades from there and just rent them. I think you can rent like 6 or 12 a month. And it's like Marvel just added 250 trades to it, like newer trades, which is pretty cool. Actually, I was going to ask you, I forgot to text you about this. Did you see the Comixology sale they had for Black Friday?
No.
They had a DC one that was ridiculous. All of their trades were $4.99.
Seriously?
Yeah, I got like an unbelievable amount of stuff. I spent I spent like $130, and I was like, I think I got like 27 trades. It was ridiculous.
I don't know how I missed that. That sucks.
I'm sorry. I should have pointed it out. I'm a monster.
You are.
I only brought it up
dead
afterwards.
to me after this, David Harbour.
Oh no. Okay, so lastly, let's talk about the year that's coming, 2018. I know you've been binge reading, preparing for this. How are you? We've already talked about this a bit, but how are you feeling about the outlook of comics as we're going into 2018, both personally, like how you engage with comics, and in a broader sense?
I think, so I think this year is going to be better than it was last year because I fell off the wagon of reading comics for a while there. I was just going through some shit and just wasn't on my radar of something I wanted to do for a while there. So I think this year will be better. I also think this is potentially the year that I maybe switch over to digital predominantly.
Yeah.
It's just I haven't been to a comic book shop and I don't know how long. I mean, honestly, I guess if I'm being truly honest, for the most part, I'm digital comic dominant now.
Yeah.
'Cause most of the stuff I'm reading are on limited because I'm so far behind that I'm just reading new stuff as it comes out on there sometimes.
Hmm.
Or I'm going on Comixology and picking up books. But I think I've only been to a comic shop 3 times since like May.
Yeah.
Outside of that, all digital reading. So I think there's a good chance I move more to digital this year, which would be very interesting because that's just not something I ever thought I would do.
Yeah. I actually just sold 4 comics, and this year I've sold more comics than I have in a while. And like Amber, for listeners that don't know, my wife, who is an architect, she's like designing a thing for me to stash my long boxes on.
Uh-huh.
The problem is her design. What we agreed upon, the amount that would go into it is 30 long boxes. And as you know, having seen my long box collection before, it is more than 30.
Correct.
So I have to get rid of 15 long boxes worth of comics. And
Why do you have to get rid of them?
because I have 45 long boxes and I have a third, like she's designing this thing to stash my long boxes, and I have 45 and it needs to get down to 30. So I'm like going through and selling some stuff, and I'm going to have like a big sale next year. And I honestly, I could see myself going more digital in the future too. It's tough. It's like really tough because I like the comic shop experience. I still have my connection with Bosco's, which is, are both of our longtime shops. You're down in Vegas. I'm still in Alaska. So I still have that connection. But at the same time, it's just like I've already switched to trades. It's only a matter of time, and like heavily to Marvel Unlimited. It is kind of only a matter of time before I start going more on the Comixology front. It's just I don't know. It's weird as like like a comic lifer that there's like this part of me that just is having a really hard time pulling the trigger. But I love comic shops and I love the actual single issue print medium. It's just I got so many long boxes, man. It's crazy.
Yeah, and that's my thing is right now, like, just I hear you. I'm like trying to find a way to store it all. Like, I still honestly, all of my fucking long boxes and short boxes and everything, they're all still back at my ex-wife's house. So I have to get those out of there at some point. But I literally need a U-Haul to get them out
Right.
because they're not fitting in the back of the Challenger. So I got to go scoop those up with the U-Haul truck, and then once I have them here, they're going to take up like a whole walk-in closet and some.
Yeah.
So I hear you on that, and I don't know if I could get rid of anything, but I definitely have to slow down and have slowed down the amount of physical copies I buy. But it does slightly feel like cheating because I do miss like the paper in my hand and the smell of the comic and bagging and boarding. So when I go digitally, I do feel like I'm cheating on my Cosmic Comics shop. And it feels kind of dirty, but I kind of like it.
I feel like you could appreciate this because you just mentioned smell. I actually had a podcast where I talked to the creator about how I really like their the way their comics smelled, and he was like, "Oh, we got really nice paper," and I was like, "Yeah," and then I told him I was like, "Yeah," I was like laying in bed and I just started sniffing the comic, and my wife was like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm just smelling my comic," and I was like, "It might have been weird," and he was like, "It sounds weird." I'm like, "Oh fuck."
Who was it you were talking to?
It was Matt Fraction. Anyways, so yeah, I have time on that, man.
I don't buy that.
100%. You can listen to it, man.
He's never smelled a comic?
No, he totally smelled a comic, but I don't think he's used to people doing it in bed while their wife is thinking they're totally weird. Yeah, different strokes for different folks. I also, one of the comics that makes my list, I read the majority of while taking a bath. So, clearly that was a digital comic because I wouldn't take a paper comic into a bath. What's that?
Fair enough.
I don't know. Some paper stocks. Like I remember, I got this DC comic last year that like it was like summer and it was kind of humid out, weirdly in Alaska, and like the cover started rolling up, and it was really weird. And it was because like the paper stock did not like it, but whatever. Anyways, let's get into our top 20s of the year. For listeners who haven't listened to our podcast or our previous episodes like this. What we do is there's like a snake draft, like fantasy football, where I'll go, Brandon will go twice, then I'll go twice, going back and forth until we're both at our number one. The comics we could pick from had to be released in some capacity in 2017, and they could be series, graphic novels, trades, single issues, webcomics, or whatever. Brandon, are you ready to do this?
I think so. Real quick on an off the side, is this the 9th year we've done this? 2009 the first time we did it?
Let me think. Probably. Yeah. Meh,
or 2008?
it was probably 2009, honestly, because I
Okay.
think you were on at Multiversity pretty early.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you want to go first, or you want me to go first?
I don't care either way.
All right, I'll kick it off. So, like I said, I went back and forth on what my number 20 would be. And the funny thing is like when I went back and forth on my number 20 ended up being what I originally had as 19, and I moved something up to 18. So it was a bit of a weirdo shift. So my number 20 is The Mighty Thor by Jason Aaron, Russell Dowderman, Matt Wilson, and a whole bunch of other people. James Herron was doing some stuff recently. There was like a million people who did issue number 700. That comic is super fun. For readers that don't know, Jason Aaron has been doing like this multi-year arc that's been tying everything from like, I mean, it had Original Sin tied into it. That's how you know it's been going for a while. But like, I mean, it's just been a sprawling epic for superhero comics, and it's been doing some awesome stuff. The Shi'ar Asgard War was really fun. It had Quentin Quire in it. It had the Phoenix. It really kind of it's funny because Kid Gladiator, of course. It felt like this. The interesting thing is it simultaneously is reflective of Marvel's kind of progressive present / future, while also being kind of like a throwback to like 70s comics in some ways, in that it was like it's a big sprawling space epics. It's like the Kree Skrull War, except for with Thor that's a woman. And it's awesome. It's really great. And I love the Mangog stuff. Mangog is terrifying. I really like the War Thor, and I thought it was funny that Volstagg ended up being this like super beast version of Thor. It's great. Like everything about it is a really, really good comic, and I think it speaks to the quality of the year that it finishes 20 on my list.
Yeah, because I know you've been very high on that comic over the years. So yeah, I'm really interested to see where the rest of your list goes.
Yeah, it's great. What is your number 20?
All right, my number 20 is Rocket Girl by Brandon Monteclair and Amy Reeder. Super enjoyable. I loved the last issue here, or is it the last issue? But did you read it?
No, it's funny because like I was meaning to keep up with it on trades because its release schedule got really crazy, and the second trade just came out. So maybe I'll swing by Bosco's and pick it up right after this.
Okay, I won't spoil anything though, but I really liked the ending. I thought, it was a great story. It was unique in that like they traveled to the future, which is the past, but you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it was just such a crazy story. And I thought, as far as the characters went, they did a great job of fleshing out all the characters and making them feel important. Dae Young was a great main character. And just in general, I mean, oh man, the art on top of that.
Amy Reeder's art is incredible.
Yeah, like, don't get me wrong, Brandon Monteclair's writing is phenomenal, but this art is just so stupid good. And this book the art for this book, obviously it's their baby, so I mean there's only those two that would have done it, but it's just so perfect. Like I couldn't imagine somebody else, like Mark Miller not doing Kingsman. I can't imagine these two not being on this book. It just, I don't know, just such a clever idea, and I thought they executed the last few issues just perfectly.
Is it supposed to be done? Is that what your takeaway is?
I can't really get into it too much.
Okay.
Because they kind of imply that there's more coming.
But it's flexible.
But
maybe it's dependent on sales.
There's a definitive ending to this one. But,
sure.
But it does look like there's more to come. So I'm interested to see what the story would be moving forward. I don't know. It's kind of almost like, do you ever watch Mr. Robot?
I watched the first season, then I was really bored by the second season.
Yeah, so like after the first season, you're like, why would you do a second season? What else could you do? It's kind of like that.
Yeah.
Although I really liked the second season of Mr. Robot, but leaving the first season, I was just like, why would you do a second? Like, that was perfect.
I heard the third season is actually supposed to be extremely good.
I haven't started it yet. I've got it all queued up on my Hulu.
Yeah. Well, the thing I want to say, like, so that book is really interesting because it's like it's a book that I genuinely really, really enjoyed, and I was reading in single issues, but it's like I've kind of forgotten about it because the schedule got so crazy.
Yeah,
and it's definitely something I need to pick up and trade, and I'll go and pick up the second one after this. But I really got it. I mean, like Amy Reeder's art, it's hard to understate how good she is on that book.
It's so clean
and so energetic too, though.
Yeah,
like, and her storytelling is phenomenal. And like, I really like the fact that like Dae Young actually feels like a young person, and a young person from the future. It kind of, in a weird way, she kind of reminds me of Bart Allen in the fact that like, the young person coming from the future that's trying to adjust to the present times. Like that's obviously a sweet spot for me. But I think they've done great stuff on that book. I really need to catch up.
Yeah, it was really solid, and just how emotive the faces are,
Mm-hmm.
and just phenomenal.
What's 19 for you?
19 for me is actually Deathstroke
Oh,
by Priest.
yeah,
And then kind of some rotating artists like
Joe Bennett.
Joe Bennett was on there.
Mark Morales was doing inks for most of it, I think.
Yeah, God, who's the other guy that was big on this? Oh, I feel terrible.
Carla Pagulian?
Yeah, I think he was on it, and then there was also
I think they've had a fair amount of artists, to be honest.
yeah, they really have. But overall, the book, story wise, Priest is killing it on this book. Like, I don't know that I would have put Deathstroke on my list any other year. But
I have to admit, it makes like the fact that they're making a movie feel a little bit more realistic because he does Deathstroke in such a grounded way. Not making my list, but it was a late cut.
yeah, it was. You were reading it then?
No, it's great. I love it.
Yeah, cool.
I just read the third trade, so I'm a little bit behind where you're at, but I'm on it.
Yeah, that's one of the few that I'm all caught up on. But yeah, it was surprising. But yeah, the art's phenomenal. Priest does a great job of like making him a relatable character and building a universe around him. Obviously with like Ravager and Jericho and all of his kids in there, it's been kind of fun. And then, just overall, I mean, just great book.
I like how he's tying it into like all the other, like the rest of the universe, and it kind of, I don't know, like I like what is the guy who always says Wilans, like the king from the African country who's like constantly like hiring Deathstroke out and doing
Oh yeah,
like I like that it really
yeah.
feels like the international like Merc comic that we've always needed but we never really knew we wanted, or always
Right.
wanted but never knew we needed. Like that's just a really good book, and it's I think that kind of ties into what I was saying about DC, where they're kind of doing some more outside the box things, because
hmm
typically when you get a Deathstroke book, it's normally just him like jump kicking things and wearing boots and being weird. And like this one is really like, I like the family stuff, and I like all the flashbacks and like his ex-wife and all the things like that. It's
Yeah.
it makes it a much more cohesive and like real feeling comic.
For sure, and then even taking chances, like making him a hero and shit like that. Like it's a trope.
Yeah. So 19 for me is an all ages comic from Image. It's called Scales and Scoundrels by Sebastian Gerner and Galad. And I think Jeff Powell is the guy who's doing letters and design. Yeah. Anyways, but that comic. So basically, what it's about is it's about this young adventurer named Lou Vander. She's got a mysterious past, but basically she's trying to find gold. She wants gold, and she like pairs up with these other people who are like trying to find gold in like this old, like this mythical land of dwarves that may or may not be real. And it's like a totally rad comic. It's super fun. It's like completely unlike anything I'm reading, but I really want the thing that I really love about it is it kind of feels like a Final Fantasy game come to life to me in some ways. And as you know, I love Final Fantasy.
Yep.
So like having a Final Fantasy type adventure comic that's for all ages is super fun. And Galad's art is beautiful. He's like a French artist who I'd never seen before, but his stuff is just so painterly and beautiful. And I'm just kind of like astounded by like this is actually supposed to be like a constantly monthly book, and they've only released 4 issues so far, but like they're like totally on schedule to just keep releasing it monthly, despite the fact that it's like the same team doing every issue. And I just honestly like I find them to be wizards in general because they're keeping up with it. But I don't know, it's a super fun book. I mean, I would suggest maybe reading it with like giving it to Dex or something if when the first trade comes out. It comes out in January, but it's really cool. It's really cool, and it has like a very lived in world. And like a lot of times when you tell like a fantasy type story, like the worlds just feel incomplete or just feel like like an homage to like Lord of the Rings or something. But this just feels like its own thing, and I love that.
That's awesome.
So 18 for me is a comic that I never in a million years would have expected to have on my list.
Oh boy.
It's the Flintstones.
Oh yeah, no shit.
Yeah, Mark Russell, Steve Pugh, and Chris Chuckry. It is honestly like no lie. You can talk about all the relationship comics you want. The best one, in my opinion, from 2017 was between a bowling ball and a vacuum cleaner in the Flintstones. A vacuum cleaner that is a living thing, which is like a little purple elephant and an armadillo that's being used as a bowling ball, and their relationship, like straight up, I'm not gonna lie, like it almost brought me to tears multiple times. And it's funny in this comic that's like largely about the Flintstones characters we know being used in crazy different ways to talk about social issues and consumer, like our obsession with consumerism, things like that. It's a really fascinating comic, but that fucking relationship, like, killed me, Brandon. I can't even explain how like heartbreaking their relationship is. And it's funny because like it's a really great comic in a lot of ways, but ultimately like those two characters are what I'm always going to remember from this book. It's a 12-issue run. It's already done. 2 trades. I love it. It's really, really great. If you ever get a chance to read it, you should, because it's such a mindfuck from everything you have like ever known about the Flintstones, because it kind of approaches it from what does this stuff actually really mean, and how like weird it is that they're using animals as appliances and things like that. It's a kind of a mindfuck, but it's really thoughtful. It's super smart. The art is fantastic, and those damn animals made me so sad, Brandon.
I read the first 3 issues and I enjoyed it. I liked like the PTSD meetings and shit in the beginning. Like it was I was pleasantly surprised at how mature it was and the angles they were taking with the characters. Like it was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's definitely, like I said, DC was really outside the box this year. I honestly can't believe Hanna-Barbera like approved them doing that.
Seriously.
It's like seriously, like you said, like Fred Flintstone was going to meetings for vets who are affected by PTSD. Like, that is not something I think that they had in the original cartoons, unless I'm greatly misremembering them. All right, what's your 18?
All right, my number 18 is Iron Fist.
Nice.
By Ed Brisson and Mike Perkins. The beginning of the series was predominantly him on an island doing like a kung fu tournament, the Trial of the Seven Masters, and that was just so badass. Mike Perkins' art on this was phenomenal, and it just had like the old like kung fu style movie feel of him just fighting these masters. And then now we've moved into like him, having to get involved with Sabretooth, which is a great throwback since Sabretooth originated in an Iron Fist comic.
Yeah.
So I really like what they've done with this book, and this is the most I've liked Iron Fist since it's been a while now.
Brubaker, Fraction, and Aha.
Brubaker, Fraction, yeah, when it was all that. I'm really digging it. I don't care as much for the costume currently. I don't like the black jumpsuit look, but whatever. Small squabbles.
What is your peak Danny Rand? Do you prefer like the classic orange or green and yellow, or do you like just plain clothes Danny Rand?
I like the green and yellow. The one during like the Fraction Brubaker era, I think was like the coolest looking one by far.
Yeah, I like the face cover, like the just kind of the head wrap type thing they did, which is kind of like a yellow version of what Daredevil wears in like the original like the first season of the Netflix series.
Oh, for sure, yeah. Yeah, he looks rad.
I do think that like the weird like I don't know, the his original costume kind of looks like I don't know, like something you would see in like Club 54 in like the 70s when everybody's doing cocaine.
Pretty much. Pretty much.
Anyways, but I have to say Brisson had a really good year. Like he did some really cool comics. I think he was doing Old Man Logan too, and people seem to like that. And I don't know, it's cool seeing like the young bucks like kind of kicking it up a notch and like taking bigger roles at Marvel, especially with Bendis now leaving.
Yeah, there's so many people leaving. It's like the opportunity's there. Somebody's got to take the brass ring,
Yeah, for sure.
It's like who's it gonna be?
Yeah, you're totally right. The one from Invincible Iron Fist from Brubaker and Fraction, Aha, like where it's like tight and doesn't have like the exposed chest and everything like that. I think that's a good look. That's the best.
Yeah,
I don't know what the look for the Brisson one is, but I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, it's like a black tracksuit with a collar.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Sounds casual.
Yeah.
Anyways, what? Oh, I'm looking at it right now. Yeah, that's a little weird. That it's kind of like a mix between like the guys in like the Hawkeye comic that always said bro, and like the original Iron Fist costume.
Yeah.
That's weird. Anyways,
bro jacked him.
What is your 17?
Number 17 for me is this quaint little fun comic that some people like to call Paper Girls by Brian K. Vaughan and Cliff Chiang.
You're back on board.
I am. That was one of those ones where reading it in chunks was just so good.
Yeah.
It's just so good. It flows so well. It's not bad by itself, obviously, by any means, but just reading it in the order, like because I would get behind like 3, 4 issues and then catch up. And yeah, I don't know, it just reads so well, and the art is phenomenal. I like the story. I'm definitely like, it's one of those comics where each month, something new and exciting can happen. You're wondering where this is going and how it's all going to end. And yeah, so just in general, just a great book. Obviously Brian K. Vaughan is phenomenal. And Cliff Chang's art is phenomenal. So it's kind of hard to believe that you put them together and you're going to get a bad comic.
Right. I think the thing that really makes that book work is the characters. Like
Yeah.
it's kind of like I care so, like, even if I didn't care about the plot, I'm just so happy to just kind of hang out with the characters that I just like it. It's just
Mhm.
like it's like a fun book to just hang out with, and the art
For
is
sure.
phenomenal. But yeah, no, I'm totally on board. That is a great book. All right, 17 for me. The funny thing about some of my books is like this comic. There's only been 3 issues so far, but I like it so much that it had to make the list. Like I was texting with Brandon earlier, and I was being like, yeah, I'm talking to my wife about like my list, and she like doesn't seemingly really, like, she doesn't really care that much, because it's just like, what is she going to tell me? Like, she hasn't read these comics, so she doesn't know any better. But she was just like,
Yeah.
and I was like, I don't know, like, should I pick this one because it has 3 issues over this one that has like 8? And she's like, which one do you like more? And I'm like, I guess I hadn't thought of it like that.
Right.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, sometimes I think I overthink these lists. So anyway, so
Yeah.
it's number 17 for me is a comic that's only had 3 issues. It's not a surprise for you because you know how much I love this guy. Garth Ennis, Goran Parlov, and Jordi Belair doing Punisher: The Platoon, which
Mm.
is a story about like this journalist who's trying to tell the story about how the Punisher began, and it's basically when Frank Castle first went to Vietnam, and like how he kind of reshaped this, like the platoon that he's like kind of managing, or that he's like leading during Vietnam and during one of like the greatest sieges in Vietnam's history. And it is really rad. It is such a good Frank Castle comic. I love Goran Parlov is probably on my short list, maybe top 5 artists of all time. I love his stuff, and having him
Nice.
colored by Jordi Belair is incredible. And Garth Ennis, I mean, the dude did Preacher. The guy did like a lot. He did Hitman. He did a lot of my favorite comics of all time, and he is one of the definitive, maybe the definitive voice of all time for Punisher. And unsurprisingly, it is a great comic. If it had more issues, I'd probably put it higher, but I can't with good conscience put it any higher than 17 with 3 issues, because there's so many other good comics. But I highly recommend it when it's all done for you to read. Number 16 for me, hilariously enough, is one comic, so it's even less. Um, that comic is actually a graphic novel. It's a comic that's made it for me the last 3 years. It's my favorite series in comics right now. It's Sam Bosma's Fantasy Sports. I've told you about it before.
Mhm.
Basically, it's a story of these 2 characters named WizKid and Mug, and basically they're like rolling around doing adventures for this like group of wizards that they work for, who effectively go and like loot places to go get like the best magical materials from the world. It's
Mhm.
basically mixing like sports, like sporting events, with like old school dungeon crawling video games like Legend of Zelda and stuff.
Mhm.
But like ultimately, like all the things where they're trying to get the prizes and all the treasure and everything like that is being determined by whether or not they can win sporting tournaments. So like the first one, they had to beat this like mummy in a game of basketball, and it was awesome, especially because Sam Bosma is a huge basketball fan. So the first trade, you can like read it, and you're like, you see people doing like Steph style crossovers leading into pull up threes, and like Russell Westbrook
Nice.
pull up jumpers and everything like that, and you're like, and then like the villain was doing like Kareem style sky hooks. It was awesome. Anyways, but
That's cool.
the latest one, the third one, is actually golf, and it's so awesome, and the art is phenomenal, and it's a great book for all ages. I couldn't, like, honestly, I couldn't recommend it highly enough. It is just an absolutely awesome comic, and I'm looking at it right now, and I just want to read it instead of talking to you, Brandon.
Oh, well, I don't blame you.
Anyways, it is from No Brow Press. I do want to give them a shout out because No Brow Press makes like the best like looking and feeling comics around. Their production value is through the roof. I
Nice.
absolutely love it. And I don't know, man. Like, I have to admit, like 2017, that's a personal trend for me.
Hmm.
Production value means a lot to me. Like if a comic had shit paper, like that's going to downgrade it a lot to me. But this comic is just great paper stock, awesome covers. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, and it makes sense. Comics aren't getting any cheaper, so kind of demanding quality seems appropriate.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what is your 16?
My number 16 is Action Comics. Dan
Ooh.
Jurgens, Doug Mahnke, and a myriad of other artists. Action Comics, I just really enjoyed this year. Like, it just felt like classic Superman in a good sense. I enjoyed the dynamic of him and Lois and their son. Um, and just Jurgens, again, like the ability to just kind of tell a classic Superman story. And coming up soon, Booster Gold. So that's always great, too. So 2018 is looking bright for Action Comics as well. Yeah, but in general, I mean, just I like what they did with the Superman Reborn arc and just redefining his history again, but mostly just bringing it back to center and making it more like what we're used to.
Hmm.
I liked the Mr. Oz stuff. Maybe not necessarily the reveal of who it was as much, but it's kind of grown on me possibly. But overall, yeah, I think it's been a solid comic. And again, like with artists like Doug Mahnke, you really can't go wrong. So,
I'm not reading it, but the two things that stand out to me. One, it really does seem like a classic throwback style book, which makes sense because it's Jurgens.
Right.
But like classic throwback can go wrong in a lot of ways, and it seems like it's a classic throwback in a good way.
I think in a very good way. Like I think it's a good starting point for Rebirth to basically, get their flagship guy back on the right path.
Right.
Even if it's got to be a little more of a safer path, I think that's a good idea. Get the ship straight and then start branching out again. I think they're doing a good job with that. Because I'd say most of the Superman titles they're doing pretty well on.
Yeah. And then the other thing I was going to say is Mr. Oz may not have had a great payoff, but I have to say I appreciated that there was so much speculation going into who Mr. Oz was. Like, I like that style of comics. We've talked about this before. Like, getting people to speculate and, like, getting people really invested in, like, the storylines in that way is something that doesn't happen all the time in comics anymore. And so I love seeing it.
And I totally agree with that.
Even if it didn't pay off.
Yeah, but I mean, it was still funny in that nobody guessed that one.
That's true.
So,
was it me?
it was.
Oh
No,
my
you
God.
did not know who it was?
No, I do know who it was. No,
Okay.
And I feel like Jurgens has been doing stuff with Booster Gold for a bit. Like, haven't they been building to that? Maybe not.
I don't know. I don't know that he's made any appearances yet, but it's Jurgen, so you know he's coming.
Oh my God, I can't believe I didn't bring this up. Like 2018, I feel like 2018 is gonna be the year where we got our boys back. You're gonna get Connell, and I'm gonna get or Connor Kent, and I'm gonna get Bart Allen. I feel like that's gonna happen.
We better.
Oh my God, I seriously,
Starting to get salty.
I'm not buying any DC book in single issues. I will buy a Bart Allen single issue, like a series. Like I will break my rules for that. What is 15 for you?
Number 15 for me is Motor Crush by Brandon Fletcher, Cameron Stewart, and Babs Tarr.
That's a good book.
It's a super good book. I love it. I love, again, the mystery of what is this shit? Why does she need it? Like, to boost her up, and why does it boost her and motorcycles? What is this shit? And then just overall, the stories, the relationships are phenomenal. Like her and her dad, her and her girlfriend. Are you all caught up on it?
I'm reading it in trades, so I'm six through.
Okay, so then there's some recent turn of events that really throw things on their ear, and I won't get into that, but I find that really enjoyable because it adds a new dynamic to what was happening in a pretty significant way. I think it's a great book, and it's one of those books that I just kind of tried on a whim because I was like, let me just try something new.
Sure.
And I am perpetually glad that I did because it's just such a solid book. It's one of those books that when I get it, it's one of the first few in that week that I'll read for sure.
Yeah, I love really enjoyed seeing Tara's evolution as a comic artist. Like her stuff on Motor Crush is so energetic. It's really great.
It's just so unique and just you can her as an artist, like she's just really come to a point where she's one of those artists you see it and you know it's her. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and
she owns the style.
Yeah, and it's just so cool. She's now one of those people that you'd be like, oh, their art looks like Babs Tarr, instead of being else. Um, so I think that's great, and I love that book.
That's funny. I hadn't thought of that. Like it's very rare where you like it's like people. There's a lot of people that look like Jim Lee and things like that.
Mhm.
But it's not like I honestly can't think of anybody else that really looks all like there are people who have elements of Babstar's art, but like Babstar really is her own person in
Yeah,
terms of
I
that.
mean, as somebody who's familiar with her, you'd see it and know within 5 seconds it was her. You
Yeah,
know.
yeah, that's true. One other thing I want to shout out about that book, not on my list, but I
Mhm.
love like the design call outs in that book from Tom Mueller. Like I love Tom Mueller's
Yeah.
design stuff, but like the way that they have like, click here for more and all that stuff. It's funny. I actually when I first read the first issue, I was like, I love the fact that like they seemingly have like it reminds me of Starship Troopers. Remember where they had always have like click here to learn more, and like Cameron
Yep.
Stewart was like, yeah, that was deliberate. We were going for that, and I was like, yes, that is
Oh, they
awesome.
were.
Yeah, they were.
That's awesome.
I mean I love Starship Troopers like
I did
not
too.
non ironically, and
No, I
so
thought it was great.
it's a great, yeah, it's awesome. It's but anyway, so like having that as a call out, I'm like, that is so awesome. So incorporating that into the design is brilliant.
Yeah, it's a smart book. I mean, it's again kind of like Babsar. It's one of those books where you can't really compare it. I don't know what other, like asthma inhaler, pink rock, motorcycle book is out there. Like
I love
I
your
just
point. I love your point that like the same thing that powers the motorcycles powers her because
yeah,
it's accurate, but you're like that seems unhealthy.
it seems super unhealthy, but I love that they embrace that and they acknowledge it's not healthy. And it's like, but why is she doing it then? Like, and I just love that about the book. It keeps me coming back because I'm like, I want some goddamn answers.
Yeah, it's a great central mystery. They've
Yep.
really weaved that in very well. 15 for me. I'm going to go through this one pretty quick because I can't really say details, partially because the last issue blew my mind. Is The Wicked and the Divine by Kieran Gillen, Jamie McKelvey, Matt Wilson, Clayton Cowles. Like seriously, the last issue has a purely black cover because they didn't want to reveal anything about what happens in it. And like you read that issue and like your immediate response is, I need to read the previous 32 issues just to see how we got here. Like we're talking about mysteries. It is so like insane that you're just like, I don't know. I mean, I think like in some ways you could look at that as a negative. You could say, oh man, like I don't remember that as well as I should. But then on the other hand, it's like you're 33 issues in, like the twist was so well baked in that you want to see kind of how they've been doing that the whole time.
Right.
It's really ingenious, and like the character work is phenomenal. I mean, Jamie McKelvey is just an absolute art monster, and him and Matt Wilson have such like a incredibly simpatico style together that is just brilliant. I love the characters. I love everything. Like one of the things I really like about the book is when how they do the saga schedule thing where it's like arc, month gap, trade, month gap, back to the series and everything like that.
Mhm.
So they've been doing these things where they'll get a different artist to come in and do specials in between. So like
Oh,
they have
okay.
like a Christmas special during their break that's coming out pretty soon that has like a bunch of different artists. They had one that's like taking place in a different era with all these gods. Like I like the fact that they're really like the way that they're approaching this book has so much thought into the world building in
Mhm.
all elements that it's just a really smart book and it's really well done and it's beautiful and it's like I don't know. I mean, I think that says a lot about the book that like it makes you want to go reread the whole thing just so you can see how we got here. Like I think that shows a real love that they've created out of readership, and I think that's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Because there's not a lot of books that make you do that.
No, for sure. Now the problem is because I'll have them in single issues. Now I have to go and dig them out of a long box, which will be a nightmare. But I will do it because I love the book.
Nice.
Number 14 is a book, the second book in a graphic novel series that made my list last year. It's The Stoneheart. It's the next book in the Nameless City series from Faith Erin Hicks and Jordi Belair. It's basically it's a story about this city that's called the Nameless City that basically all like the political interminglings that are going on, all the stuff that's going on in the world, but it's told from the standpoint of a kid that's part of basically the accepted rulers of the city and like a street child and their relationship. The first one is all about setting up the characters. It was kind of like the first and second Harry Potter books. This one was like the third, fourth, and fifth Harry Potter books where like the plot becomes extremely evident and like things go down. And it's super rad. I love the Nameless City. I think I like this one more. And beyond that, Faith Erin Hicks is just such a phenomenal cartoonist. Her stuff is incredible, and when you pair her with Jordi Belair, it's somehow even better. I don't know, man. I mean, it's I think like the fourth all ages book I've had so far, but it's the thing about all ages is like, you know, like when you like a Pixar movie, the reason why it works is because like Dex is gonna love it and Eva's gonna like it just as much as you do.
Yeah.
Like it's something that speaks to everybody, and The Stoneheart is a book that absolutely does that, and I just think it is an incredible achievement by one of the best cartoonists we have out today. So bravo, Faith Aaron Hicks, you're really good.
You're really good.
What is number 14 for you?
Number 14 for me is Star Wars.
Ooh.
Most of the year, Jason Aaron, and then slowly it's got some Gillen in there now.
You got some
LaRocca's been
Salvo
around for a while.
LaRocca up in there.
Yeah. LaRocca's been around for a while. I love this book. I like what they're doing. I like the additional characters they've added. I love this like stormtrooper hit squad, the Scar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I like how they've weaved in some stuff from Rogue One as well in recent issues. And so I think they've just done a great job with this book and making it feel like part of the Star Wars universe. And I've got to give it respect because I was initially really annoyed that they were doing away with
Extended
universe stuff that I loved for all those years. But I can't argue with this comic. Like, this comic is good. And I mean, you know, obviously it's Jason Aaron. I got Gillen in there. So you've got solid writing. You've got LaRocca in there. So you've got solid art. And you've got Star Wars. So I don't know what else you could ask for.
It is worth mentioning that Brandon is like a very big Star Wars fan. Like did you have all of the Extended Universe books?
I do.
Yeah. Like
I got rid of a bunch when we moved, but yeah, I kept a good majority of them too, though.
I think that's the biggest bummer of us not like living in the same place. No, that's not the biggest bummer, but I really wish that while we lived in the same place that I'd borrowed more of those books because I've never read all those books. And I really, even if it doesn't count now, like there's so many, like I've heard nothing but good things about those.
That'll always be my Star Wars universe.
Yeah, it is so weird that they got rid of that. But I have to ask, how was the Aaron Gillen transition?
It was pretty good. They just took it in another direction. The cool thing about the Star Wars series as they've done it is sometimes it's the long form narrative, sometimes it's little individual issues from like Obi-Wan's journal. And so they do such a good job of kind of not sticking to one particular format or story that it doesn't feel too jarring to have a new writer come in.
Yeah.
Because you just kind of move over into the next story while maintaining, kind of the overall narrative. Honestly, it kind of was pretty seamless.
I think the comic that I'm most bummed out that I'm not reading right now is Dr. Aphra because I love the Darth Vader series. I thought that was great, and I loved Aphra. And I don't know. I mean, like the thing that really got me, like I thought the Vader Down series or story was really great. And it's kind of weird that I haven't jumped into reading all those books because like I love the Vader books so much that I haven't gotten into the larger Star Wars book or I haven't gotten into Aphra. But one of these days,
the new Vader book is dope too.
Is it?
It's really good. I don't know off the top of my head.
God, is it Soul?
What's that?
Is it Soul?
It might be.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty safe bet. You can just say Charles Soule is probably writing it if we can't remember who's writing it.
Yeah, probably.
He writes everything.
He's the new Bendis for them.
I love how I just Googled Darth Vader expecting it to come up with the exact thing that I wanted, as if it wouldn't come up with a million other things.
Right.
Anyways, what's your 13?
Number 13 for me is a book that hasn't had a ton of issues, but to me is one of the better books this year, and that's Mr. Miracle.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Is it Jeff King?
Tom
King, and
Jeff
Mitch
King as an Iditarod Musher.
Yeah, I don't know why I thought that instantly. But yeah, Tom King and Mitch Gerards. Really loving what King's putting out this year. And this book is no exception. And then Mitch Gerard's art is just
Garrett's.
Garrett's.
Yeah.
Ramadan. It's all just phenomenal. Absolutely love it. I love the unique take they're taking on Mr. Miracle and the whole new Genesis vibe. It's just, there's nothing like it out there. To me, that's this year's Vision book.
Which makes sense with Tom King.
Exactly. It's just got that. You can tell this was like DC going, hey, what offbeat character who maybe isn't really huge for us do you want to just take and do something really different with? And they're like, oh, Mr. Miracle. And then he just went for it, just like he did with Vision. So, yeah, I absolutely love that book. Obviously, again, there's not a whole lot of issues, but from what's been put out so far, I love it. I absolutely love it.
So the weird thing about that book, it didn't make my list, but the funny thing about that book is I didn't really like the first issue, but I've loved every issue since. And it's weird. Like I kind of feel like I need to go back and read the first issue because I love the other ones so much.
Yeah.
And the other thing is like, gotta give a big shout out to Mitch. He colors himself too. Like he's doing all of the art, and like that's. I mean, I know he gets like an out every once in a while when Tom wants to have like a black panel that says Dark Side is, but at the same time, like he's like doing everything by himself is like pretty killer. Like that's pretty impressive.
And there's a lot of panels in those books. There's not a lot of splash pages.
Tom King enjoys a 9-panel grid quite a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, no, but I love it. And again, going back to kind of DC taking more chances.
Yeah, for sure. And I've always liked Mr. Miracle. It's cool getting him back in the front.
Yeah, I think this is the coolest version he's had since, maybe like JLI.
So 13 for me. This is another short issue run. Is the return of Runaways at Marvel.
Nice.
I really love that book. Rainbow Roll, Chris Anka and Matt Wilson is the creative team behind it, and it is like the thing about Runaways that I really love is they really do feel like kids. Like you have to have that. You have to feel like they're a group of kids who like have chosen their like they have this family that they've been brought together with, and it's like the family is kind of it's like a atypical family, but it's the one that they need, and it's supposed to feel like that. And sometimes that's off. Sometimes that doesn't feel right. But Rainbow Roll, Chris Anka, and Matt Wilson get that so precisely right that it's really hard not to love it. Anka's art is incredible. He's really great at drawing kids that look like kids. Or teenagers that look like teenagers, and he also like gives them distinctive styles, which I really appreciate. Matt Wilson's colors are amazing, and like the characters are just so right. I love it. I mean, I just love Runaways that I'm so overjoyed to have them back to being great again. And like, I don't know, one of the things when I look at these lists is it's like to a certain degree, it's like I want to look at the best comics, right? But it can be more than that. Like, what do I enjoy the most? And I just really enjoy Runaways. I think it's just a really great comic.
It didn't make my list, but I actually have really enjoyed the return too.
Yeah, like it also feels like something will pay off in a while. Like I love the stuff with Victor's head that's going on right now. And I also love that like he's in a state of disrepair because of the vision. Like it kind of feels like a Marvel tapestry thing that we haven't kind of had in a lot of ways in a while. So that's nice. Number 12 for me is a book that was on your list earlier, Paper Girls from Brian K. Vaughan, Cliff Chang, Matt Wilson, and Jared K. Fletcher. Great comic. You already covered a lot of stuff. I talked about it a bit too. I want to really underline how great the art is again. Cliff Chang is doing some incredible things with different eras, with like the present storyline where there's crazy robots in the world. Matt Wilson's colors are awesome, and the most recent issue was freaking fantastic. I really love how like we jump through time so much in there. So it's like it starts out in the 80s, and then we have like kind of more modern Y2K type stuff, and then there's like some stuff that takes place in prehistoric era and everything like that. Like we jump all over the place, but they all kind of, I don't know, have their own distinctive feel in the way that like they should as an era changing series. It's a great book, and I just really love it. And there's something to be said about the way Brian K. Vaughan writes comics. Every single issue, like you were talking about earlier, and how Marvel and DC haven't been doing like the full trade like embracing like that they've done in the past. And the thing that I like about Paper Girls and the way Brian K. Vaughan writes comics in general is the fact that he simultaneously writes for the trade and single issues in a way that very few people can, because like every issue has like a big payoff, and it's always so fun because of that. So anyways, that's my number 12. What do you got?
Number 12 for me is Superman by Tomasi and Gleason and Monkey, and again another smorgasbord of artists, as DC is wont to do lately. Yeah, I've really enjoyed what they've done again with the family, and I think Tomasi and Gleason just really nail the whole like father-son dynamic, like they did with Batman and Robin. Was it Batman and Robin or Batman and Son?
I think it was called Batman and Robin.
Batman and Robin, yeah. So and now with the current Superboy, not my Superboy, but the current Superboy, who I do enjoy.
Superboy.
Yeah, I do enjoy him, but he's not mine. But I like how they weave in Damian into this series too, and just I think they do a great job of that emotional connection of Superman and his son and Lois and coming into that. And I think they've done a good job of returning Lois to kind of her former glory,
Yeah.
as opposed to the New 52 where she was just kind of this chick that existed. But now they've made her again back to like that, matriarch of the DC universe type deal. She's just as much in the mix as her husband. Because honestly, you can't have, in my opinion, a good Superman without a good Lois Lane. They're just they complement each other, or they should or have to complement each other to make for a good Superman book, in my opinion, because he
Yeah.
grounds her. And that's what that 52 version was missing, in my opinion. But yeah, I've really loved this book, and I think DC has done a really great job through Rebirth in, again, like I was saying earlier, just reestablishing Superman. It also tied over with like Green Lanterns, and Superman was a Yellow Lantern and fought Sinestro, and that was dope, obviously, because I would love me some Green Lantern. But yeah, overall, Superman, solid book.
I'm reading that in trade. I really enjoy it. It's one of my favorite Rebirth books. I think I've only read the first 2 or 3, but I really like what I've read so far.
Yeah, it's solid.
Yeah, there were, and that Jorge Jimenez dude, like that before he went over to
Yeah,
Super Sons, that guy is a fucking boss.
beast. Yeah, absolutely.
What is 11 for you?
11 is this little book
I know
like
what
the
it
other
is.
one. What is it?
Saga.
Negative. Saga's not on my list, believe it or not.
What? Double
Didn't
no
make
Saga.
either of our
Look at
lists.
us.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Nope. Instead, though, another Image book, Seven to Eternity by Rick Remender and James Opeña.
Yeah. Jerome Opeña.
What did I say?
James.
Oh, did I really?
Yeah,
My
that's
bad.
okay. James Heron did do 2 issues, so I think you just combined them into one person.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, Heron's issues weren't bad either, but I'll tell you what, when Opeña came back, it was just like, there it is.
Yeah.
Just Remender Opeña combo is just, to me, one of those combos that I just can't get enough of.
It is definitely like one of the modern classic combinations.
They are. They complement each other so goddamn well. And I don't know. I love this book. I love the Mossack's, and I like just kind of this fantasy world that they've built out that doesn't feel kind of like you were talking about earlier. It doesn't feel like a retread of everything else. It's kind of got its own vibe to it. It's like X-Men fantasy. But yeah, I love it. I'm kind of sad because it's going on a break. But that's okay because I read in chunks anyway. But
no, that's a good book. It's a really interesting book because like the kind of prose stuff that kicks off each issue.
Yeah.
It's a really smart way of building up the universe, but at the same time, like there's like a little part of me that like kind of loathes reading it in the same way that I hate like the pirate stuff in the Watchmen, which makes me a total monster. I'm like, what is with all these words? I need more pictures.
No, I'm not gonna lie. I honestly feel the same way. There's a couple times where I've like, okay, because I'm reading things in chunks. There was a couple times where I went to go like, okay, I got like 4 issues of this. I need to read this. I love this series. I don't know why I'm not reading it. Why have I not gotten this off my, Comixology iPad app? And I get in there, I look at it, and it's got that 1-page like prose, and I'm like, oh, that's why. Okay, what else is there? And then, but then once I sat down and like got through it all, I was like, God, why? Well, like, why am I such an idiot? Like that 1 page does not take long to read.
I
Just
know,
get
I
through
know.
it.
But it's like so exhausting. I'm like, can't like Jerome Opeña draw something on this?
Yeah, just put like a smiley face, and I'd be happy.
Oh man, I'm glad we're on the same page with that.
Yep.
So 11 for me is Kill or Be Killed by Ed Brubaker, Sean Phillips, and Betty Brightweiser. I mean, I kind of feel stupid for saying this, but I mean, it's Brubaker, Phillips, and Brightweiser. Like, if you like them, you're gonna love it, and if you don't, then you probably aren't reading it. But I mean, it's just like it's them. I mean, it's them doing their noir stuff. It's them doing something different. This one is definitely a bit different because there's a lot more like narration that's taking place from some point in the future that we're kind of like flashing back to, and it's a really interesting book. I don't know if you really know the presence or the premise, but I feel like, spoiler alert, skip ahead like by a minute if you haven't read Kill or Be Killed. But basically this dude is being like haunted by a demon who effectively will kill him if he doesn't kill somebody every 30 days every month. And so like he's become like a vigilante just to preserve himself, but then he gets really into it, and then he realizes he might just be crazy, but then you're like, is he crazy or is he being actually haunted by a demon? And anyways, and it's a really fascinating book, and Phillips is great, and Elizabeth Brightweiser is, in my opinion, I mean, it's really tough to say because there's so many great colorists these days, but she's my favorite colorist. I love her stuff, and there's like her mood that she achieves in her art is just so astonishingly fantastic. Yeah. Anyways, I love that book. It's really great. It's Brubaker and Phillips. That's it. 10 for me is a Remender joint. It's Rick Remender, Wes Craig, and Jordan Boyd doing Deadly Class. Soon to be a TV show, which actually may be one of the reasons why Seven to Eternity is like Conan's slowing down, because Remender is deeply involved with that.
I think he says that in these pages. He doesn't say that's what it is, but he says he's working on a show.
Yeah. So Deadly Class is like they just filmed the pilot. But anyways, the comic itself is awesome. It's been on my list every year since it started dropping. It's an incredible book. The characters are fantastic. Wes Craig, in my opinion, is the greatest comic artist of like the past few years. His stuff is amazing. His storytelling is phenomenal. I honestly would place this book on there if it was written by me. It'd be straight trash. But if Wes Craig was drawing it, it would be amazing. So I would place it on there, even if that was the case. Remender is so great. So yeah, I mean, it's made the list a bunch of times, but it's hard not to love because of the characters and just like the incredible arcs that these characters and stories are being taken on, that are like really dark and get to some really grim places, but at the same time, it's just like it's hard not to be invested in it.
Right.
What is 10 for you?
For me, number 10 is Old Man Logan.
Ooh.
I really enjoyed Lemire's run, which came to an end this year. And has moved into did you say Brisson? Brisson's arc with Diodato on art currently. I just like the past lives arc that Lemire did on the way out the door was so cool because it was just him like hopping through time, and you got to relive all these great classic Wolverine styles, like costumes and moments, and it was just kind of cool. Like you get some time with the 90s one, you get the black and orange, the brown and orange suit. And it felt so classic. And I thought Lemire's run on that book was just so goddamn solid. Mm-hmm. And then Brisson's stuff, hasn't been as up to par, I think, with the Old Man Logan, from Lemire, but it's picking up pace now. Now that we're into Legacy, I think they're doing a better job of bringing more back. Like there's a Scarlet Samurai now that we don't know who that is. And
wait, Silver Samurai or Scarlet Samurai?
Scarlet Samurai, it's a new one.
Okay.
Yeah. Who is apparently working with the Hand. Like there's a panel in this most recent issue where like there's just thousands of Hand climbing up this building in Japan.
That's awesome.
And it's just so dope.
It's hard to go wrong with Wolverine in Japan, regardless of which version of Wolverine it is.
100%. Yeah. So I'm really intrigued to see who this Scarlet Samurai is. We know it's a female. She's on the cover of the book without a mask on, but I don't know who she is.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. I think it's been a solid book. I don't know how much longer they keep this book going with the new Wolverine coming, or with the original Wolverine coming back, but I'd be interested to see how that works.
I can't believe we didn't say 2018 most excited, the return of Wolverine, but I guess he's technically already returned. But yeah, no, I mean, the interesting thing about me is like I haven't read that book. Part of it is like I don't know why. Like I'm reading Astonishing X-Men and I have like a serious problem with Old Man Logan. And I don't know what it is. I'm just like, what are you doing here? Yeah. I do. Like, I like read it. And I'm just like, you're stupid. Get away from my comic. Just replace you with a normal Wolverine. Damn it. This is ridiculous. I don't know why that is. It's kind of like the 05 level of bothersome to me. It's just like, stop replacing my X-Men with time displaced X-Men. I know it's a very X-Men thing to do, but I'm like, I don't want it.
Right.
Oh, God, that's such an X-Men conversation to have.
It really is.
Oh, that's ridiculous. All right, what's number 9 for you?
Time traveling alternate universe interlopers.
Yeah, I'm like, God, who knows? Maybe it's actually Old Man Logan. That's the version that was in the cave from back in the day. We don't even know.
Oh my God, the cave one's got to come back. If it doesn't come back, Marvel's got to bring me on to do like a 3-page one-off to explain what he's doing.
I feel like you're the only person that hopes that a plot thread that was left hanging from Age of Ultron comes back.
That was the only interesting plot line of the whole thing.
What about 8 days later?
Okay, that was pretty awesome. That was pretty fucking incredible.
Oh, that's the best and worst.
Oh,
mostly
I'm
best.
so disappointed in myself forgetting about that. Like, that's just, who am I?
I was so mad about that. What's number 9 for you?
Oh, Age of Ultron. Invincible.
Oh, right. Okay.
Uh,
Okay. First off, no spoilers because I'm reading in like the compendiums now. So I'm
oh,
like,
okay.
I'm too like the right at the beginning of like the final arc.
Ooh, yeah, the end of all things.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been good. I have really enjoyed what they're doing with this and the way they're bringing it to the end. I'm still very skeptical on it being the end for real. Um, I
Wait, like
just,
actually, like you don't think the series is going to end?
I don't think so. I
Otley
think,
Otley just posted a picture of his last page. He finished it.
yeah, that's all good and well, but I could see them taking a little bit of a break and then be like, by the way, rebirth or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I just,
I feel like that's your superhero brain, like the history of that, like playing tricks on you. Like, it's a Marvel, man.
right, but like, you're not even going to get to 150 issues?
Yeah, isn't it finishing at like 144 or something?
Yes,
That's
and then
fucking
some
weird, man.
like I just don't. I have a heart like I don't. It's definitely the superhero big two in me, but like, how do you not to get to an issue 150 when you're that close?
Yeah, yeah,
Like that's
that
just
is funny.
insane.
Couldn't you do six
But
filler issues where it's just like I don't know, Alan the alien running around punching things?
yeah, and turning out to be a Viltrumite, like
Of
it's got to
course,
happen.
it's necessary. You need to write those. You need some like you can write 6 issues in fan fiction. Anyways, so what do you love about it?
I just think that it's back to what it was for a long time there. I think for a bit, and I could see if it is the end, why it's the end, because it kind of wasn't as great as it had been for a while there. Wasn't bad, but wasn't as great. And I think it's kind of returned to that greatness now because it has the focus of this supposed end.
Mm-hmm.
You're seeing things come to a conclusion that have been building for years. And I just really enjoy getting that payoff because, with Big Two comics, you don't typically get a legit payoff.
Yeah.
This has always been that superhero comic where you can get those payoffs. And so it's nice to see it getting back to that point, and every issue of this arc has a payoff, and sometimes very big payoffs. So it's been a lot of fun this year to kind of, I don't know, just touch base again with Invincible kind of at its basic point.
I think we both had it on our list last year, and I think it had already started the resurgence. It really started when, when they did like the reboot arc where he time traveled, and then it turns out it was like the most tragic thing ever. I do have to ask, 1 to 10 scale, how horrible is Mark's life right now?
Oh God, pretty bad. Pretty fucking bad.
That's the funny thing about Kirkman comics is like the greatest trick he ever pulled was convincing you to love people that he's going to torture.
Yeah.
It's funny how that works. It's just like all of his comics, you're like, oh man, so I'm going to introduce you to this great guy. His name's Mark Grayson. He's like you if you got superpowers, and it's going to be awesome. His life is fucking horrible. Like, horrible. And you're just like, oh man, this is taking a dark turn. I like the punching through planets thing, but the rest is bad.
He does a great job of developing characters that you love but would hate to be.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, if you think about it, like, isn't that what most superheroes are? It's like being Peter Parker seems cool until you're Peter Parker, and you're like, this sucks.
Yeah, but if you're Peter Parker, like in a couple of years or 100 issues, whatever comes first, you're going to end up like being rich and running a corporation. And then maybe you'll go through some downtimes, but then you're banging a couple supermodels. And, it's just, I don't know. It's all right. With Mark Grayson, you just know that it's perpetually going to get worse.
Fact.
Like, there's no like, oh my God, look, he's rich. Nope, that's not true. He just lost his family for like 8 years. Like,
let's hope it has a happy ending.
I hope it has a terrible ending.
You're a horrible person.
I am, but I feel like that's the only way it can end.
Oh my God. I hope you are extremely wrong.
I hope it ends with all the Viltrumites being wiped out, and then Al's like, wait a minute, no, I'm half Viltrumite, guys.
Well, I mean, in Cave Wolverine walks out and they high five, and then comics blow up.
Yes.
Perfect. All right, number 9 for me is a comic I read this week in prep. It is honestly like I'm gonna look at my list really quick. Yes, I'm going to confirm this. Brandon, this is the comic from my list that you haven't read, you may have read, that you would most like. Okay. It's a Black Mass comic, which I didn't think I would like because I read the Ghostface Killer comic that they released, and I was like, this is not good. But then I love Ghostface Killer, so that's a problem.
Right.
Anyway, so I think I was painting with too broad of a stroke, but 4 Kids Walk Into a Bank is its name. It's from writer Matthew Rosenberg, artist Tyler Boss, and letterer Thomas Maurer. And it is really, really great. It is a super fun comic. It's a super emotional comic. It's a super ridiculous comic. Tyler Boss is probably my favorite artist that I've come into contact this year for, like, that I'd never experienced before. Like, his stuff is just incredible. Like not just like stylistic stuff. Like, his stylistic stuff might even be like not even one of the main features. He's just a phenomenal storyteller. Like, his character work is incredible. He does incredible page design. The colors he does are just out of this world. In the comic, the story itself is just really engaging. Basically, I'll give you a short version. There's four kids. One of the kids, a girl named Paige, her dad is involved with some not so good characters, and largely the story is like, can she save him from going to jail by the four kids who are 11 and 12 years old robbing a bank for him without anybody knowing? And it's a bonkers story, and it's really good, and I enjoyed the hell of it. I'd heard really good things for a while. For some reason, I just hadn't read it. I'm going to blame the Ghostface Killer comic, which is probably something Black Mass does not hear every day. But anyways, it's really great. The trade just came out in November. You'll have to check it out if you get a chance. But
yeah, I like Space Riders by Black Mask.
I got that trade. I haven't read it yet, but
that Ceriti guy, the artist, he's the guy when we did that Marvel draft that I said should be doing Doctor Strange.
Yeah. I remember you raved about him, and then I think I ended up getting Space Riders after you suggested that I check out his art.
Yeah, that's a weird, crazy book. Anyway, sorry.
So number 8, this is a super cheater book. It's a book that came out in trade this year in February, but I think the entire series came out in 2016 technically. But whatever, it's my list. I do what I want. Lake of Fire from Image Comics. It's Nathan Fairbairn writing and coloring, and Matt Smith on art. Basically, the premise is, what if Crusaders in in France in like the 1200s discovered aliens, and
nice.
what would they do with it? And it's basically like it's kind of like the movie Aliens if it had Crusaders instead of Sigourney Weaver and a bunch of people and a bunch of Marines. It's super rad. I kind of feel bad that I simplified it that much, but that's a pretty good elevator pitch for it. It's like the character work is phenomenal. Like, Nathan Fairbairn is a tremendous writer beyond being an incredible colorist. The way that he built these characters, both from reality and from his own mind, is incredible. And you get, like, we were talking about how you like get really invested in these characters, even though you know that these bad things are going to happen to him. Like, that's 100% this book. But you still love it. It's just incredible. And Matt Smith's art is just, he's up there with Tyler Boss as one of my great art discoveries from this year. I love his stuff. It's just phenomenal. And one of the best things, it's 5 issues. You buy one trade and you got the whole story. It's I really highly recommend you checking it out because I think you would really, really love it. But yeah, that's my number 8. What do you got?
All right. Next on my list at number 8 is Batman White Knight.
Oh, Sean Gordon Murphy.
Sean Murphy. Yep. I have really enjoyed the story. Obviously, Sean Murphy's art is always a joy to behold. But I like kind of what he's doing here with, like, what if the Joker was a good guy?
Worth noting, Brandon has a Joker tattoo on his arm.
Yeah, and I'm a huge Batman Joker fan. I love that there's like, in his stuff, there's always, when it's dealing with Batman, there's some kind of animated series throw in or something, and I love that. But just, he's got such a good grasp on Batman and Joker's relationship, and I like that what he's doing with Joker. Joker going sane isn't necessarily something they haven't done before, but I don't know that it's been done this well. I really enjoyed the way that they unloaded the modern Suicide Squad Harley Quinn and replaced her with the classic one in a very believable, great way. And I wish they would do that in the main DC universe. But just in general, it's definitely one of those books, like, when it comes out, it's one of the first books to read as well. I don't know. I'm very interested to see where they go with this. Like, what's the end game here? What is the Joker up to? Like, is he really going straight? Is he not? Is Sean Gordon Murphy's art going to continue to be this good? Yup. That's
part's
not
locked
really
in.
a question. Yeah. And the cover's been great. I I don't know. Sean Gordon Murphy is just legendary status anymore to me. The guy is just so top notch solid. And the fact that DC again is just taking chances and they're like, hey, here, have your own little mini Batman universe and go to town, buddy. Like, it's great. I love seeing them give artists and writers that kind of freedom because it's clearly that freedom that's making them a better company this year than they were last year. So yeah, just another great step in DC's step towards being relevant again.
I think it's really smart and kind of silly that they like haven't embraced this as much in previous years, but like I don't know if you've noticed, but they have a pretty good history of like using like having like writer artists or like really great teams telling like standalone Batman stories. Like, why doesn't that happen more often? It seems crazy that it's taken this long to get back to that. Sean Murphy doing a Batman story based around the Joker just makes sense. And like when they're done, they're gonna have like a trade that will sell for them for years. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it's smart. Also, like Sean's a super smart guy, so him working in things like callouts to the animated series, callouts to Dark Knight Returns with all like the telecasters talking and everything like that on screen.
Yep.
Like all that stuff is really smart. I think he even supposedly threw in a Schumacher reference in there.
Oh, great.
To like, I don't know, maybe there's some bat nipples involved. I don't know. But like, I don't know. I mean, it's smart for him to do those things because that just helps. It makes it feel like I don't know, kind of a microcosm of all things Batman.
Yeah, and then also going back to, the quality for your money. It's a $3.99 book, but it's got a hard cover.
Yeah.
Like cardstock, and I appreciate that because a book that looks this good and, is a Sean Murphy going ham on Batman, like you need to do it right. You need to give it the quality that it deserves, and I appreciate that they did without jacking the price up $2. But yeah, I think there's definitely, I think Sean Murphy has a love for the Batman character and the mythos, and I think it really shows. And I always, as a huge Batman fan, really appreciate when I come across something like that. So I really love that book.
What's 7?
Number 7 for me is Astonishing X-Men.
Woo!
I have thoroughly enjoyed that book. Believe it or not, a book with old man Logan, but Wolverine, Archangel, Psylocke, Rogue, Bishop, Gambit. So it's basically a lot of my 90s X-Men.
And my boy Phantom X.
Yeah, and Phantom X told in a pretty cool story with some pretty great rotating artists. I love that it's like a battle in, the astral plane and in the whole like chess match essentially between the Shadow King and Professor X. I think it are you reading this?
I am.
Are you all caught up?
Yeah.
Okay, so spoilers for everybody. Very interested about this Mr. X stuff. And
wait, maybe I'm not caught up.
Oh shit. Okay.
That's okay. Keep going.
You want me to keep going?
Yeah,
okay.
Go ahead.
And Professor Xavier essentially inhabiting Phantom X's body now. So I don't know if Phantom X is dead or just like firestorming it with him or what, but Xavier riding around just calling himself X, and just he took off Phantom X's mask, so we see his face. Like I don't know, it's a trip. Like I'm enjoying it. I'm seeing where they go, but I kind of like the idea of like Professor Xavier having like, I don't know. I'm hoping like the muscle memory of Phantom X and just like running around kicking ass.
I hope he still pretends to be French.
Yeah, that'd be hilarious.
Yeah, French Charles Xavier and Phantom X. Oh my God, yes, that's amazing.
But yeah, so like I'm in the end of Act 1 just occurred, so now it's like, okay, where do you go? But the cast that they have is just phenomenal. Like, and again, I got Bishop back, and they put him in a very similar costume to the old one. And I wish he had a mullet, but he doesn't. But that's okay.
You take your victories where you can get it.
Yeah, exactly. I'll take little steps. Now, if we could just get Maggot thrown up in this.
There was somebody who is going to be writing an X-Men comic soon did an interview where apparently they talked about Maggot a lot and about how much they love Maggot. So who knows? Maybe we're gonna be on there. But
I didn't know an X-Men story.
I really enjoy that you just turned Firestorm into a verb. That was amazing. Yeah, I mean, it totally makes sense. I feel like if anybody knows what Firestorm's power set is, they're going to 100% know what you're talking about. But I loved it.
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah, I don't even know if that's it, though. Maybe Full Scale wiped him out, and it's just him now. But I don't know.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to
Excited
do
for it.
the next two, or will be pretty quick for me. Number 7 for me is Giant Days from John Allison, Max Sarin, and Whitney Kogar. Pretty sure it made my list last year. The reason why it makes this the list this year and last year, and will until it stops running, pretty much, is because it is the funniest and most charming comic I read. It's basically about three college-age girls going to school in England and just living their lives. It's kind of like Freaks and Geeks if it was a comic, because they are quite literally freaks and geeks. And it's super fun. It's like very relatable. John Allison is a super funny guy. Max Sarin's art, like her facial expressions are incredible. She is the queen of facial expressions when it comes to comic art at this point. I love it. It's just incredibly charming. And I'm reading it in trade, and I got to give Boom credit. Their trade collections are incredible. They do a really great job. Number 6 for me is the aforementioned book that I read in the bathtub, which makes a lot of sense given how often characters appear half naked in it. It is Star-Lord, the 6-issue series that Chip Zdarsky, Chris Anka, and Matt Wilson did together this year, and partially in 2016. Hilariously enough, the second book on my list that has the same art team, but the thing I loved about it was the fact that it's called Star-Lord Grounded, which I think it was called Grounded, which, could make you fearful that it's like people are going to be dialing up. Yeah, exactly. Hell no. Hell no, there's no dialing in. But it is like, it's basically Star-Lord. He's been forced to stay on Earth for a bit while he's separated from the Guardians of the Galaxy. It's all about him finding himself and finding like why he needs the Guardians, while still being really fun and telling a really, like, basically, to spoil it a little bit, not that it really has spoilers, he ends up working in like, the bar without a name, the bar for supervillains. Mm-hmm. As like a bartender, and it's just kind of like what happens. He's also forced to do community service, so he has to like build a relationship with this old man in a retirement home, and it's basically about how those things kind of weave together and how he somehow gets involved with Black Cat, who like forces him to steal some stuff. The plot isn't really important so much as just like, it's just a great story with that really humanizes Star-Lord in a way that he kind of hasn't been in a while, and I love it. And Anka's art is incredible. There's some really fun little like character moments that he does. Also, it has the best Agent Brand in forever, and I love Agent Brand. So yeah. Anyways, great book. What is your number 6?
My number 6 is Doom Patrol by Gerard Way and Nick Darrington.
Yeah.
I enjoy quite a bit just how offbeat and crazy this book is. There was the whole issue recently of the cat that disappeared and came back as like a man cat, and like just so weird. It's one of those books that like you don't take too seriously. It's a fun read, and the art's great. The stories by Gerard Way are just, like I said, kind of wild. And it has nice throwbacks to the old Doom Patrol stuff, but in general, it just feels so fresh and so new.
Yeah, I really love that book. And Darrington's art is just amazing. That guy is a beast. What is number 5?
Number 5 for me. Okay, so now we start moving into fun stuff. Not that wasn't fun, but next up for me is Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps.
Ooh.
I actually really enjoyed what Venditti's been doing with Sandoval and Van Sciver. I think that this is the best Green Lantern's been since John's left. I know Venditti's been around for a while, but I think he's finally really getting to the point where he's out from underneath John's shadow, and he can start kind of, instead of having to feel like initially coming in, you've got to keep some kind of continuity, he can kind of do his own thing. He's done some interesting stuff, taming the Green Lanterns with the Yellow Lanterns and making them one, making Sornik not to the new Sinestro basically, and turning her bad but for reasons that totally make sense. Like it's so good. And just the fact that it typically has all of the Green Lanterns, including my man Guy Gardner.
Yeah.
And just the way they've built up new characters and brought in Yellow Lanterns and made them Green Lanterns, all while also like killing people, as the Green Lantern books tend to do when there's like a billion of them. So overall, I've really, really enjoyed it. It's not, gonna win an Eisner or anything like that, but when we were talking earlier just about books you just enjoy, this is one of those books that I thoroughly enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, there really is something to be said about that, and it's like it's also in your wheelhouse. Like that's the
Yeah.
thing is, um, while you try to be objective with this stuff, you have to be true to who you are. It's like I'm gonna pick the books. Like if there was a great X-Men book, a really really great X-Men book, it would probably be at the top or near the top of my list. Or if it was like Wolverine, proper Wolverine, not Old Man Logan, that was just awesome. Yeah, not that trash old man. Oh, ironically, I do want to point out that in Star-Lord, Old Man Logan is a supporting character, and he is excellent in that. It's the one time I liked Old Man Logan. Besides when my boy Miller's on it. Anyways, but yeah, you got to enjoy it. Speaking of comics that are in wheelhouse, number 5 for me is Warren Ellis and John Davis Hunt and Steve Buccellato doing a reinvention of the Wildstorm universe in the Wildstorm. And it makes a lot of sense that I would have this on my list because I love Wildstorm. I think you know that. And the funny thing to me is like Warren Ellis has reinvented Wildstorm before. He did it with the Authority and he did it with Planetary, and he's doing it again, and he's doing it completely differently. And I think it's really funny. It's just like more of like a spy ops type book where it's just like all like secrets and crazy technology and very modern Warren Ellis, but it works really well. I like some of the stuff that he's done where he's like reverse gender or flip genders, where like Jackson King from Stormwatch is now Jacqueline King. It's just really smartly done, and it's reinvented in a way that just 100% works. And John Davis Hunt is a phenomenal artist. Another guy I hadn't experienced before, but he is such a good fit. And I know it's probably not cool to still love Grifter, but I love Grifter. He is like OG Images Wolverine for me, and like that dude is my jam. I love him, and he's been great. He's not been a huge part of it so far, but he works really well. Anyways, but I'm really impressed by like the fact that Warren Ellis can go back to the well and somehow find like a new type of water. It's just like he keeps finding new shit, and I just don't know how he does it. He's just brilliant. Number 4 for me is a single comic breaking all of my rules, like a literal single comic. It is Batman Annual number 2 from Tom King, Lee Weeks, Michael Lark, Elizabeth Breitweiser. It's basically a single story that may or may not be canon, who knows, that's about the relationship between Batman and Catwoman. All it is it basically tells their life story and how their relationship evolved. And it is like, I had it on number 1 briefly. It was really, really high up there.
Nice.
But I ended up pushing it down because I have arbitrary rules and I'm a weak person. Anyways, but it was just such a good book, and it was emotional. Like I read it and I was getting a little verklempt as I was reading it, and I actually read it twice. The only beef I have with it, and I tweeted about this, is the fact that there's a successful action scene where Batman runs around with fucking foot slippers on, where like bedroom slippers that easily will kick off as soon as you start running. Not realistic. That's horseshit. There's no way
they're bat slippers. They totally would stay on.
I know, and plus he's probably got this weird core string thing that he learned from the Man with Mountain or whatever that allows him to keep them on his feet. But anyway, so Batman Annual 2. What's your number 4?
Sticky foot style. Wait, what'd you say?
Number 4?
Oh, I thought you said 2 for some reason. I was like, I don't know about
that. I'm going out of order. Fuck order.
All right, perfect. Free for all from here. All right, my number 4 is actually The Flash. I have really enjoyed what Williamson is doing on this book, along with D. Giandomenico and Googe, and God, who else is on this book? That's the problem with DC's books. Is a lot of artists. With 2 a month, man, there's just so many artists. But I think I nailed most of them. But yeah, I love the long form narrative that Williamson's done with this book. Stuff that was happening at the beginning of his run is now starting to pay off here. He's done some fun things with building a new like casting characters around, other love interests besides Iris West. He's actually made me care about not my Barry West, Barry Allen.
I like the hybrid though.
Or no, not Barry Allen, but Wally West. Why can't I keep my names right?
Because there's a lot of characters.
Yeah, Wally West.
Really quick, just forewarning, I am only 3 trades in, so be careful.
Okay, I won't go too much further, but I just think that Williamson's done a very great job of just making a fun book and making a book again that like 3-4 issues down the road has a payoff sometimes that you kind of sometimes didn't think they'd go back to. I've always been a big fan of a long form narrative.
Mm-hmm.
I know I said earlier I like that there's the one and dones, the 2 issues and 3 issues, and there's still some of that here, but all of it is kind of building towards things or has payoffs. Nothing really seems arbitrary. And then you had like the Flash Batman crossover, the Button, which gave me a little bit of Jay Garrick action, which I always appreciate.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I really, really, really enjoyed the Flash.
I think you can really tell that Joshua Williamson loves the Flash.
And I love his Flash, so I'm so thankful that he loves the Flash.
But I mean, like, that's like dangerous because it's like sometimes it can turn to fan fiction or like bad fan fiction. But you can tell that like he's a writer who loves everything about this, but actually can have like distance from it so he can do it well. And I think there's something to be said about that. What is your number 3?
My number 3 is X-Men Blue.
Woo!
Your favorite mutants.
Oh, I do have to say that is my favorite of the two, like X-Men Blue and Gold.
Is it really?
Oh, yeah.
That's funny. I thought for sure you hated these guys.
Well, we talked about the first issue. I loved the first couple of issues. It was great.
Yeah, and I think Bunn has done a great job. Are you reading it still?
No, I'm kind of like doing the unlimited thing, so I'm way behind.
Okay. So I won't give away too many spoilers, but there was great stuff at the beginning. You got a little bit of Mojo action recently, which was fantastic. And I like that it's like they've added cool stuff. So like you've got the Wolverine from the Ultimate Universe in there. Now you've got Bloodstorm, who was part of like Mutant X.
Yeah.
And now they're like lost in time and they're running across X-Men 2099. It's like they're becoming the new Exiles book almost. And I kind of enjoy the vibe that Bunn is putting down on that. I'm picking up what he's putting down. And, again, Mojo. I don't know if I can stress that enough.
No, that is like solid gold for you.
Yeah, and not to mention that this Mojo run crossed over with the other one, Gold, and included Sentinels and throwback uniforms and Days of Future Past references and Longshot and yeah, so I really, really, really enjoyed what they were doing there, and I continue to enjoy it. I honestly think this is the best the X-Men books have been in quite some time. We'll see how X-Men Red shapes up, but I know that Jean costume is kind of horrid, but I'm willing to give it a chance. Also, it is like the team that nobody asked for or wanted.
Great creative team though. Taylor's a good writer, and Mahmoud Asrar is very good. So
great creative team, but I just don't understand why it's like the entire cast of all new Wolverine and the X-Men.
Yeah, it is really strange. Yeah, like I do like the Blue Book. It does sound bonkers. I hope that they end up getting sent back because they belong at home. My God. Yeah. Anyways, not that they're like apparently they aren't even the original 5. They're like another original 5 or whatever. I don't know. It's
which is why I think they'd be a great transition over to Exiles.
Yeah,
like
do it.
Make it an Exiles book.
Send them away forever. I'm fine with that.
Yep.
Number 3 for me is my favorite new series of the year. It's a Skybound series from writer Daniel Warren Johnson and artist Daniel Warren Johnson with colors by not Daniel Warren Johnson. He's not that good. I'm just kidding, Daniel. You're great.
He's on fire.
Yeah, Mike Spicer is the colorist. Anyways, I do want to give him a shout out. Just the mere fact that it's 9 issues in and it started this year and he's doing writing and art. Good job by you, Daniel Warren Johnson. It is an incredible comic. I think you would love it. Basically, it's the story of a family ultimately, but a lot of it comes from the story begins with the main character. She's dealing with the fact that a warring tribe that they were squaring off. Her tribe was squaring off against. Came in and to punish the family for like damaging the matriarch of the other tribe's daughter. They cut off the tribe leader's daughter's hand, the main character, and she was an artist, so she's lost the thing that makes her her. And so it's about her exploring, like finding herself, while also them dealing with this war that they have with this other tribe called the Paznina. And it's like basically like if like I don't know, like Dio could become like a comic book artist, I think it would be Daniel Warren Johnson because his stuff is so metal and explosive and incredible. It's basically like Akira meets, I don't know, I just insanity. It's so his art is amazing, and it's a beautiful book. The story is great. It's emotional. The characters are phenomenal. I love it. It's amazing. It's definitely my favorite new comic of the year, but it's not my favorite comic of the year. Number 2 for me is an Oni Press series that's made my list every year it's been out. It's Kaiju Max. And this has been its best year yet. Xander Cannon telling the story of a supermax prison for giant monsters. It is the saddest comic, Brandon. It makes me so sad. It is like heartbreaking. Like seriously, like there's some stuff. It's like I want to recommend it to people, but I'm like I don't know if I want them to be sad. But it's really funny. It's very sad. It like the characters are like so well done. The plot and the drama are so perfectly orchestrated. It just blows my mind. Xander Cannon is a genius. Like I do think it says something. The fact that both my number 3 and number 2 are by basically singular creators. Xander Cannon has color assists from Jason Fisher, but he's doing the colors himself largely. But I mean, it's just such a good series, and it's completely unlike anything else I'm reading. It is like such an original creation. I don't know. I just love it. Like that's one of the books that I would recommend most highly to people these days because it's so unique, but it's just such a good comic. What is your number 2?
My number 2 is X-Men Gold. I have loved what Guggenheim is doing.
Yeah.
It just feels like a classic X-Men book. You had Sentinels, you had the Executioner randomly brought back out of mothballs, and he was pretty damn cool. You've got Kitty leading the team, Omega Red, and then again you've got Mojo.
It really sounds like they just did a survey of Brandon Burpee and just started dropping stuff in that you would really like just to really get to you. Except for it doesn't have Maggot.
Legitimately. No Maggot though. They're holding out on me, but you've got to build to the good things.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I absolutely love this book. It had a little bit of controversy at the beginning with the CF stuff.
Just a little bit.
A little bit, which was unfortunate that he was such an idiot because his art was really phenomenal. But I think they have found a good stride with the individuals they've brought in since, with like Silva, and it's one of those books where there's a few Lashley, and whatnot, Medina. Mayhew recently. But yeah, no, it's been a really great X-Men book. It feels like a team book like we haven't had in quite a while. More of the standard stuff, less of I don't know, whatever it's been recently. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. Although, obviously I did enjoy like Lemire's Amazing X-Men, things like that. But yeah, gold has been gold. And I really like what they're doing with the X-Men books, and I hope they keep it up.
I'm, honestly, like I really need to catch up, but it really like that's a stamp of approval if you're on board with pretty much all the X-Men books right now.
Yeah, I'm pretty goddamn close. I'm trying to think of what else is out there that I'm not reading. I've read Generation X. It's okay. But I'd say across the it's good, actually. It's not just okay. It's good. But not quite on the level of these books, obviously. But most of the stuff they're putting out right now is fairly solid, and I'm pretty stoked by it because in recent years, it just hasn't felt right.
Yeah, I was going to say it's the first time in a while. And like, I mean, you're ride or die with X-Men. So if you're kind of out on them, that's saying something.
Yeah.
All right, what is your number 1?
My number 1 is Batman Annual 2, but mixed in with all of the Batman stuff.
That's the funny thing is I am like way behind on that regular series. I just bought it because I heard it was really good.
Dude, it was so goddamn good.
Yeah.
It was 100% so good. But King's work has been phenomenal. And you've got Gerard's in there, Garrett's
did some. You got Mikhail Janin. You have David Finch. I think Joel Jones is doing some stuff right now.
Yeah, but in general, like it's been so good. In particular, issue 14, there's a panel in there that I absolutely loved, where it's like Batman and Catwoman kissing on a rooftop, but the majority of the 2-page spread is the sky and the stars, and it's just such a beautiful 2-page spread. And I've really enjoyed the way that they've really delved into like Catwoman and Batman's, courtship over this whole year and things like that, and the way that's going. I again enjoyed the button stuff that they did, but I think King just has a really solid grasp on just writing in general. But
he's pretty good. He's pretty good at that stuff.
he's kind of okay at it, believe it
Yeah.
or not. I think this kid's got a future.
Yeah.
Um, but no, I mean, like he's so solid, and like the Vision book and this and Mr. Miracle. I mean, the guy is just on fire right now, and following up on a run like Snyder and Capullo, where a lot of people really enjoyed it and kind of set the bar for Batman for years now. He stepped in pretty seamlessly and made this pretty goddamn good book pretty goddamn quick.
Yeah.
Without it feeling like a retread of what they were doing. So yeah, Rebirth has been a godsend to DC, and I love that they're doing again something a little more outside of the box with this whole Batman, Catwoman potentially getting married business. And that annual was just so good,
Yeah.
so good.
It was ridiculous.
And then just the more recent Batman issue too, where they did the whole Catwoman and Lois Lane setting up Batman and Superman to get together because neither one of them wanted to, like, Batman didn't want to reach out and tell Clark about his engagement, and he felt like, Superman could give a shit less. And then Clark is on the other side like, oh, that's one of the greatest men I know. If he's not telling me, there must be something there. We must not be as good of friends, and they're just both like seriously overthinking it. And I thought it was like a cool dynamic. And the buildup of that story to the end was just perfect. And next issue is the double date, and I can't wait for that.
I'm gonna go back to the question that James Kaplan had about trends. One thing I do want to say is this has been a year where a lot of people have done really good stuff at making superheroes feel like people in a way that they don't always do.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, absolutely.
I like that. I think that's great. Like the Star-Lord stuff had a lot of really great parts of that. Batman Annual 2 was like, that just felt like a love story about a couple that like lived their life together, and it was great. And like my number one is like one of the definitive books for this. It's The Unbeatable Squirrel Girl again. I'm like ride or die with that book. Ryan North, Erica Henderson, Enrico Renzi. It's totally absurd. It's ridiculous. But at the same time, it's like, for me to say that like a comic that has been number 1, 2, or 3 basically for the last entire time it's existed on my list, to have its best year yet is really saying something. But it had this one arc that was taking place in the Savage Land, and basically what was happening was the Savage Land was being taken over by ice, and it was going to kill all the dinosaurs. And so Squirrel Girl herself wasn't recruited to come down. She was recruited basically her alter ego Doreen Green because she was really great at computer science, and so was her friend Nancy. And they're going down there to use their computer science skills to help solve the problem of whatever's going on. Turns out it's actually Ultron as a dinosaur who's causing the problems. And it's so awesome. I mean, it's like, honestly, like I explain the story to you and you just start laughing, but that's like every story for Squirrel Girl. It's stuff that you wouldn't think that would happen, and it's like all these outside the box solutions that are just genius. They're just so funny, and they're so smart, and they're so real. Like a lot of this stuff is just like normal people stuff. If you had a big fucking tail, and if you like had to fight Ultron every once in a while or anything like that. And like they also have worked Craven in, so he's just like this guy who has a van who's like a total weirdo, who also is a normal guy who loves Squirrel Girl, like friendly with Squirrel Girl. It's just great. And also, like, probably my second favorite issue of the year was its 26th issue, which was a zine comic. And basically, the entire issue was comics that were created by cast members of Squirrel Girl about characters in the Marvel Universe. So, like, there was a comic that was written by Howard the Duck that was done by Chip Zdarsky and Erica Henderson that was just basically a detective story where he was, like, making out with a hot lady. And it was amazing. And then there's, like a story that's basically propaganda about Loki that's like told like in forward about how he's a good guy, and then back if you read it in reverse, it's actually about him as a bad guy. That's written by Ryan North with art by Carla Speed McNeil. And then there's, like I said, there was Jim Davis from Garfield doing a comic about like Galactus and Silver Surfer. I mean, it's really cool. Oh, also there's a comic that's in there that's written and drawn supposedly by Kraven the Hunter that's about how Spider-Man is actually the villain, and it's really awesome.
Nice.
Anyways, it's so cool, and I like the fact that these characters are people, and I love that trend. It is a trend that I really, really enjoy, and I feel like Squirrel Girl has been a huge part of that, and that's a big part of why it's number 1 for me.
Excellent.
Yeah, we did it. 2017.
Hell yeah.
You know, last thing I want to say before we go, I am happy that we're both really happy with where comics are right now. Like, that's good.
Yeah, 100%. Because we were definitely critics last year in the worst possible way of the industry, I think.
Which is funny because you and I are both typically like deep lovers of comics. Like, we always find something to love. And for us to be kind of off for a year really speaks to like kind of the weird place comics were.
They really were in a weird place. And it's so evident when you look at how this year has played out in comparison.
Yeah. It's been a great year. But thank you everyone for listening. Off Panel will be back after the new year. Should be the first week. But Brandon, thank you for coming on. I always appreciate you taking the time, buddy.
Yeah, I always enjoy being on, and I love end of year.
Woo! Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Off Panel with my pal Brandon Burpee. You can find him on Twitter at Brandon Burpee. If you're a fan of the show, there's some big news. Off Panel now has a Patreon. If you like the show and want to support it, consider backing it on Patreon at patreon.com/offpanel. There are fun rewards and insider information you can get if you do. Big thanks to all my existing patrons, including David Baraldi, Evan Blazer, Andrew Scott, Brian McRae, Ira James Udaskin, Benjamin Birdie, Henning Allers, Modern Magic Stories, Nick Hall, Bruno Batista, Abraham Reisman, Adrian Diaz, Bobby Angus, Bjorn Basin, Darren Neely, John Hendrick, Steve Anderson, Michael Perlman, Phil Nall, Ian Maxfield, Cliff Chang, Benjamin Shipper, Colin McMahon, Chris Palmer, Maxwell Schmidt, Dan Lee, Scott McGovern, Nathan Fairbairn, Kat McKenzie, Lou Iovino, Christopher Carter, Nicholas Kesslake, Brian Dickerson, Greg Rucka, Ryan Mail, Adam Highfield, Nicholas Gardner, Andrew Corrigan, Fiona Staples, Chris Morse, Johan Barander, Chris O'Halloran, Mark Abnett, Mike Murphy, Michael Shirley, Tom Barnett, Jim DiMonacos, Norbert, Nick Lowe, James Kaplan, and Mission Comics and Art in San Francisco. You guys are all the best. Don't forget to like the show on Facebook at /sketched. That's SKTCHD. Follow it on Twitter at @sketchcomic or follow me at @slicefriedgold. Want more from Off Panel? Subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher and give the show a rating and review while you're at it. A quick thanks to the band Wolfpack, whose excellent track Outro from the album Volmilch opens and closes the show now. Give them a listen as they're totally rad. Thanks for listening, and tune in the first week of 2018 for a new episode.